Councillor Foster,
Present.
Councillor Van Leeuwen,
Present.
Councillor McElwain,
Present.
Councillor Kittredge,
Present.
Councillor Dunsmore,
Here.
Councillor McCrae,
Here.
and I'm here too. It sounds like we can hear each other, so that's great. No addendums or corrections to the agenda as was sent out to all council. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest with this item under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Okay, seeing none. So the purpose of getting together today is to talk about the CAO performance evaluation process, and we're going to have Rashid, our manager of HR, kind of run this meeting. Important right off the bat to make sure it's clear to all members of council that we're talking about process here. We're not talking about content or about any identifiable individuals. That's why we're in open session here. So just want to make that clear. We're talking about the process. So I don't want us to stray into talking about content, because once we have the process in place, then the council will have lots of opportunity to talk content during the process. But at this point, we just want to see if we can come to an agreement on what the CAO performance evaluation process is. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Rashid, our manager of human resources. Welcome, Rashid.
Thank you very much, Mayor Linton and Council. Good to see you all. Happy New Year, if we didn't say that to each other. Just as a housekeeping, Jess Furman, who's our HR journalist, she's in the room with me, so she's just sitting on the side. If I look this way, that means I'm asking her to control the PowerPoint, okay? So all full disclosure there. So thank you for coming in. So our topic today, the CAO performance template and the evaluation process. So we created this brand new, looking at what was here before and the kind of feedback what we received during the CEO recruitment process, and what I saw an HR review which we conducted, and we saw there's some work we can do to make this template and the process more appropriate for our needs. So that's the attempt what I've done here. The HR department's been working on this. So introducing this enhanced new process is timely as well because of the change of guard and the new CAO coming in. Council needs to know set the goals for the new CAO. The CAO must know what their goals and objectives are for the year. So it was timely to look and review this process and come up with this tool and a template, which is what we're going to be changing. So if you Jess, could we just start the PowerPoint, please? Yeah. So we will just start this PowerPoint, what this workshop is gonna be about. So I will just go over the process itself and also the changes, what we proposed and what's changing and how this template works. What is it based upon? I'll just go through all this. So my presentation shouldn't be more than 20 minutes, and after that is open for debate. So next slide, please. So this is, I just reiterated this. So it's why we're making these improvements to this process is based on council feedback, concerns over performance review process, which we heard, and we are trying to address those. HR review of the existing process also highlighted that it requires improvement. So we wanted to improve our process. This is just what I just said, and what are we changing is the evaluation toolkit. What does the program looks like in the end? What's the end product? How do you go about it? So as an overview, I just want to talk a little bit about what the CEO performance challenges are and managing that as a board and a council. What are your challenges? So this new process should be setting up this foundation for good communication. So when we talk about communication, it's very important in this role that it's understood by the CAO what are the requirements based on their priorities as set by the council. So we need to figure that out at the beginning and communicate it clearly to our CAO so that there's no ambiguity as as the CAO starts working and delivering on to all these goals. So right at the beginning, this is important that we just set this dialogue and a conversation between the council and the CAO to setting those goals, and there should be reduced misunderstandings in the end when we review. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing it. The other thing is that this process in itself is the absolute performance indicator of achievements of and effectiveness of a CAO's, understanding of the role, understanding of what's required of them, what this community needs. So basically providing clarity in the beginning rather than having upset feelings in weeks and months from now that we wanted the CAO to achieve this and the CAO is achieving such and such. So that ambiguity goes out of the window. Another challenge with the CAO performance, if I would just highlight, council sets policy as a body. So you set your direction as a body, and here's what you're trying to achieve: give feedback to an individual who actually could be your opinions. Yeah. So your performance evaluation, there's 6 or 7 people evaluating one person. And your other challenge is that when you speak as a body and you set direction in the council chamber. So I want to highlight that the difficulty in designing a performance system for a CAO, the first drawback is this, that how do you now provide the feedback? And the process should be robust enough that your feedback is accumulated and it's actually amalgamated in a document or in meetings or whatever tools you use, and then the feedback comes to the CAO that this is what the council thinks. Because let me just give you an example. If 7 of the council members here are giving Rashid feedback, and all of you are giving me different feedback on one of my competency areas, which one is valid and which one is not? So that confusion itself, the message must go to the incumbent in this role, the CAO, that what are you trying to say as one voice or as 7 different voices, that this is the feedback on this item. So that's the biggest challenge which we will try to address in this workshop today, to make sure that how we can, through a proper process, have the tools at hand and use them in a way that we can provide feedback, which is appropriate feedback, which is based on evidence, and it's based on consistency and the message coming from council as a whole. This is an important process which I have seen before, and councils who do it according to a process and follow consistently, it is achievable. It's not a rocket science. You are just providing feedback at the end of the day. So that was one challenge which I will try to address. And finally, what you'll see is that this is a vehicle to set the goals, like I said in my previous slide. So basically, we are conveying to the CAO that here's your goals. You start working on this piece of paper and a document with council. Council will debate that. Council will have every opportunity to write and rewrite those goals as you see appropriate. And once the marching orders are given to the CAO, they understand what they are supposed to do in the year. Next slide, please. So what are the principles to guide performance evaluation? So I'm not going to be too academic about it, but I'm just going to say that if you look at achieving standards of excellence, what does that mean? So CAOs, in my opinion, are essential and effective in local government to operate with standards of excellence. So what is the standards of excellence? We need to set those. So we have to look at that. Valuing employee relations. So I think CAO performance evaluations are a way for mayor and council to recognize, appreciate, and evaluate their relationship with their employee. So councils, like it's a famous statement that you only have one employee. So what is your relationship like that? How do you want to build it? How do you want to have this relation unfolding? is up to the council to set that standard. What kind of relationship you want to have with this employee? One of a trust, one of factual and fact-based, or where goals are clear and achievements are appreciated and feedbacks provided, shortcomings are also communicated. So that's the kind of relationship I'm talking about, that valuing your relation. Continuous improvement toward achieving organizational goals. It goes without saying, what are we doing here? So basically, the foundation of performance management system is aligning those goals and expectations of the CAO to your strategic objectives. If you can achieve that right from the get-go, this is a clear line of sight for the CAO to see that, okay, if I contribute on all these items, this will be actually achieving the council's strategic objectives in this, that, and that area. If that is clear right from the get-go between the parties, there's no ambiguity in that, you can provide proper feedback as you go along. If this is ambiguous and you do not set proper goals, of course, there's going to be repercussions that this relationship will deteriorate, and we don't want that. Effective ongoing communication, we addressed it before, so I won't go in detail. And performance evaluation is a process. So it's a process. It's not a shot in the dark. It's not just on the day off. It is a process. It begins with goal setting. It begins with conversations throughout the year, providing feedback as you go. Some organizations have, every quarter they have performance conversations. In our system and suggested process here, we just have one annual review, but you can provide feedback when you like. Every council meeting providing feedback. So I would suggest that we understand and agree on what the process should look like and what the end result is, so that everyone has clarity that, okay, we agreed at the beginning, this would be our process. Okay, so timeline for completion for this year. So I'm just putting this as suggested timeline. So let me tell you why. Because of it being an election year, this can be debated. This can be discussed between council members, and you can tell me your guidelines, your timelines. I am just suggesting that how we can do it this year, because it's an election year. So step one is that in September, the CAO, I would go through the steps in a minute, but September, the process starts, and it's supposed to be completed by November 11th, before the new council comes in. So this is why these dates are this way. We'll come back to this slide when council wants to discuss and debate, and you have any views on that. Next slide, please. So this is the process. So what are the steps? So what we have put here is for ease of understanding. So under 1.1, this is CAO's process. So they are reviewing all the governance requirements. They're reading all the documents, all the bylaws, all the requirements of their job and the duty as seen important to them. So this is the homework they would do before they actually start writing their goals or doing their performance review. So can I just take a little pause and just add one thing? This process is talking about performance evaluation, which is end of the year process. It's not starting from the goal setting, which we today, later on, we need to I will share with you a work plan template, which is in part of this presentation. And that's the kickstart of a process. So basically the CAO and the council needs to agree to certain goals, be written and be agreed upon. That process we will share with you. This process, what's in front of you as a CAO's process, is the end of the year process. So after reviewing all the requirements and the documents, we strongly encourage that the CAO also reviews their hiring documents. This is the employment agreement. This is any promises made during the hiring process, anything what's been mentioned. So they review all that. They also review any contract, job description, covenants, or anything that's been discussed amongst the parties, because it's a new CAO. They must do that kind of understanding and review before they start looking at any goals and key results. So what are the goals and key results? That work plan, which council will set now. At the end of the year, the CAO is now reviewing that. Okay, what were my goals? What was I supposed to achieve? And they look at that. They also do a review of the core competencies, any performance matrix, and they pull all this data together and they write their review. So the process here is saying that the CAO would fill the template by saying, okay, this is what I understood. You told me what I am supposed to do, and here's my review of that with work examples, with some factual information. They will send the template to council. So, and they conduct the self-assessment and they send it to us. So can I just go to next slide, please? So mayor, council, and HR managers process. And these are suggested process, like I'm saying. Councils have every right to give me another process or any changes to this. So mayor receives the CEO's information package. So CEO done their work, it comes to mayor's desk. Mayor and council now provide individual feedback. You all will be given an opportunity to read that, and you will say, okay, we agree, disagree, whatever your comments are, you provide them in writing, and mayor and HR can actually finalize that feedback. We receive that feedback, we finalize in a template and a document, and then mayor and HR, we share this consolidated report with the council. So council can now see that, okay, this is how this feedback will be provided to the CAO. So mayor and HR managers share final evaluation with the CAO in 2.5. In 2.6, CAO and mayor sign off on the final evaluation. So this is how a suggested process looks like. So next screen, please. The CEO, mayor, and HR manager meet to discuss performance evaluation. What happens in this meeting? And this could be, again, a council's decision. Is this the right composition? Joint review of final evaluation report, then final review of proposed new goals for the CAO, which have been suggested by the council. Meet to sign off on this report that yes, we are all in agreement, final signatures. The new year begins with the performance evaluations cycle again. So the cycle starts again with these goals, which are now set and agreed upon between the parties. This is just now consolidating all those process steps into one slide. I'm not going to waste time on there. So this is another way to do that. Here, I'll just take a little bit of an opportunity to talk about what performance errors could be. And this is just, if you already know this stuff, please apologize for spending some time on these, but it's an important piece. So there are certain principles in performance management, which I just want to reiterate, and let's see if you have any questions on those. The first one is called the error of central tendency. So this is a very important one. Raters sometimes they do not want to judge employees effective or ineffective. So they avoid checking the extremes. So if you look at the little picture underneath, so most of times they want to stay in the middle. And this happens to managers all the time, that when they're reviewing, they leave this objectivity and subjectivity out, and they go to this, middle place somehow. I have seen hundreds and hundreds of performance reviews which look like this. So to understand that, no, it takes courage to call somebody effective or ineffective is okay, as long as it's based on factual information and you can rate accordingly and you can provide evidence to that. It should be okay to rate people on extremes as well. Leniency and strictness biases. So once again, we being very, very good people, sometimes we are too lenient and our biases kick in and we are too easy in evaluating employee performance. We do not want to have a bad relation, or we do not want to be seen as a strict employer or a manager. That goes towards, all lenient feedbacks. The strictness bias is just the opposite of that. Well, I am the person who has to be heard. I have the responsibility and I can actually rate everyone strictly because I see, I can just make sure that everyone have understood me. So those kind of managers. So these are errors. These are not good things. We need to be aware of those, that when we are evaluating, it has to be evaluated on performance standards. The standards are up for grabs. You set those standards, and those standards this person's achieving. So when you're providing feedback, you stay true to those standards. And the leniency bias is much more common, by the way, so strictness is less. Personal prejudice comes into play when we are rating people. So a rater's dislike for a person may distort the ratings. Sometimes raters are unaware of their prejudice, which makes such biases even more difficult to overcome. The little blurb there, prejudice is a great time saver. You can form opinions without having to get the facts. So this process, this is not a cheeky comment from HR. I just want to say this. This is about understanding that unknown to us, sometimes we can have prejudices. If we have those and be aware of that, at least if you follow a process and the standards which you set for a process like this, you can actually give an opinion and a feedback which is appropriate, which will help the person change their whatever shortcomings are. So I just want to highlight this one. Next one is, the recency effect. So using subjective performance measures, basically ratings are affected strongly by employees' most recent actions. This happens too. So you forget about the whole year of great work, but last week, Rashid upsets you and you're going to give them, and that we remember that. That's human psyche and nature. We remember the most recent interaction with this employee, and this could impact your rating. So I'm just making us aware that it should be the whole, it's not just the recent. The contrast errors, once again, raters sometimes compare people to other people that, that person really good and friendly. When we go playing golf, he's always listening to me. But this person under scrutiny right now, I'm providing performance review for such and such, and that person is no better than them. So this is another place where we don't want to end up, because raters should not be comparing employees to each other. Rather, we should compare to a set performance standard. Okay, so how to rate employees? You all know the 5, steps. So but I'll just go over that on my last slides. I have a little bit more information I'll share with you. The township also have the strategic goals. So I just park them here. Those are your strategic goals. I'm not going to review those with you. So next 2-3 slides, you are aware of the council goals, and those will become the guiding principle for the CAO to set their goals with your help and your input. So let me just take a little pause here. I just want to share the template itself, which actually helps us. Is there any question, Mayor or Council, up until now? If we need to take a pause, or I can just carry on.
Any questions from Council for clarification? Councilor Kitchers?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I do appreciate us having this conversation, but I have about 10 pages of comments, and I don't think I will be captured in this meeting. So I feel that we should submit our comments to you, and this should be reevaluated rather than deciding it right now. There are some questions that I have, and I think I'd like to talk about them at the end on each sheet, and even the previous one about the evaluations. I've done a lot of performance reviews. There are some things that are not acceptable, and that is a category. Performance reviews are also legal documents, and if you have, which I have, had to go to court, they are, if you're giving glowing reports forever and then you want to can somebody, you've just hung yourself. So like, you have to have a process that is really objective and substantiated. So I sort of feel like, we need to I mean, I really appreciate that we're going to be doing this again because going through a process, but it really needs to be substantial and verifiable. So that's just my comments so far.
Go ahead, Rashid. Oh, Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Mayor. I only have two brief comments at this point in the presentation. The first one, when we're going through the process, Rashid, when the council provides their feedback, their 360 feedback, and then you and the mayor review that and provide a consolidated report back to council, is there an opportunity at that point to change the consolidated report based upon feedback from council? Because sometimes the comments coming back may not be exactly what were meant when providing the 360 feedback. So that's one question. And the second one, it was more of a comment, and that is you referred to the prejudices, and but you only mentioned a rater's dislike, and that works both ways. A prejudice can be positive or negative, and I think that has to be taken into consideration in the report writing as well. So those are my only two questions / comments.
Can I just address that, Mayor, before we go ahead?
Yeah, for sure.
So absolutely. So prejudice is, you remember the leniency and the strictness error is speaking to that. Some people are too lenient, some are too strict. Prejudice for sure as well could be positive or negative. So you have extremes. By highlighting those errors means that we should be aware of those. We are encouraging for us to be aware that it's a strictly process-based evaluation system which we are trying to achieve here. So if we follow this, I think it will end up in, after these conversations, it will end up into a program and a process which can help us to get to the end result. So I get your point, Councillor McEwen. How this plays out once we amalgamate your comments and everything. What I've done previously is that you actually have seen that report, what's going to be presented to CEO. That's where you speak up. It's a closed council meeting. It's about an identifiable individual. So in that council meeting, you make those decisions, not this process, not Rashid. You are in the room and you say, oh, okay, why didn't you amalgamate this comment of mine over that? That's up to council to decide. So you will be seeing a consolidated report with what goes to the meeting, goes into the meeting in the evaluation meeting with the CAO. I'll leave it at that, but we can explore it further when the time comes, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Rashid.
Okay, so this is the template. So I think the process itself can be debated as much as you like, and I'm here to answer every question and works together to make it better. That's what I commit to. I am just very proud of this template. So I'm going to say for a couple of reasons, because this is not new to me. I have actually implemented this process in a couple of municipalities, and it's been pretty successful. This template is based upon the best practice out there in the industry for CAO performance reviews. It is also been in consultation with the CAMA, the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. They have a toolkit, so that's been consulted in writing this. This kind of template is in place in many municipalities, so it's already been tested. How the process to support this template can be different in different organizations, and the fail points are for different reasons why this doesn't work. But overall, the template is a template. It's a tool. We can tweak it. We can do many changes to that. So on this first page, you will see all the process steps are again written, all the 7 steps in the left-hand column. On the right-hand column, you have the principles to guide performance evaluation, which talks about one of the slides which I shared with you, achieving standards of excellence, valuing employee relations, continuous improvement, effective ongoing communication, and performance evaluation is a process. So it just covers that and reiterates that every time we fill this template, it reminds you why we're doing this. Next slide, please. So this is where the real work starts. So in this template, if I just, this is all under discussion. So you guys can let me know if this works for you. If you look at the strong local economy under council strategic goal, and then you have some objectives, these can be captured, many objectives in there. What the CEO at the end of the year is going to do, when we remember in the CEO process, they're going to look at the work plan, the goals, which you will write together and agree upon. They're going to cut, copy, paste those goals under this first paragraph, CEO work plan goals. And then underneath, they're going to provide work-related examples to say, how did I achieve all this stuff? So yes, I have done this. I struggled on that, provide you credible examples of that. Then the council comment in the bottom column is the amalgamated review, which we talked about in Councillor McEwen's question. After reviewing all the comments, a standard comment, which is agreed upon by the mayor and HR can actually help you amalgamate all that, and that is council's comment. Because I reiterate that again, you cannot say that Rashid on the same competency have 7 different reviews. Sure, 7 reviews been heard. I am saying that again, that if one person says absolutely he did not complete this, and one is saying excellent, one is in the middle, and 7 different comments, this will become a confusing mess for the receiver to hear that this feedback is really just out of whack. So council can make a decision on that, how you're going to handle that. That's one of your challenges. So once the CAO does this completion and we provide this feedback, the CAO actually, after writing their own work plan goal and a work-related example, before they receive the council feedback, they rate themselves in the right-hand top corner. They say, I think I am excellent, exceptional, good, or needing improvement based on these examples I provided you. The council rating is although the final one. So your rating would be, it could be averaged out, it could be anything between your 7 comments. Once again, we can agree to a process that we then can say, okay, all of you, Councillor McEwen, Councillor Kittredge, Councillor McRae, you provided 3, 4, 2, 1 different rating, and the average rating is such and such. This is fair process. So council's rating is the final rating. Employees rating could be different. Council rating could be better than the employees, could be worse than the employees. I don't mind. So I'm just providing you a tool how to get to the end result. So I won't go through all the other 3 or 4 goals, but I'll just take you to the competencies. So one by one, you have gone through all those goals, and the CAO provided their work plan, the goals, their everything, and we repeat that to each goal and every goal. It could be hundreds, I don't mind, but I'm just giving you as an example, that's the place you put them. The core competencies piece is the one I am really proud of. So here's where a lot of questions which council probably and I heard this during my feedback and conversations with different council members, that we want to know a little bit more. So strategic planning, for example, the first one, okay, that's a core competency for a CAO. My definition of strategic planning is positioning the organization and the community for events and circumstances that are anticipated in the future. That's my definition. Council, you can agree to a different definition if you like. Work-related examples, the CEO must provide now examples. How did you contribute towards strategic planning process or strategic planning or whatever, you put those examples. Council comments on that. Council says, okay, we think our CEO is strategic enough or not, or here's the improvement, here are the things we are really proud of, or whatever. So that's your feedback. According to that, employee rates themselves, and you, council, your amalgamated averaged out rating is there. Then you go to policy facilitation. So implements programs, policies, and projects which are created to meet the needs of council, staff, and the community, and maintain support for the vision and implementation of actions taken. So this is where they have to provide concrete examples once again. What did they do to do this facilitation of policy and provide feedback? Next slide, please. So citizen service, this is the one determining, so this is definition of citizen service in my opinion, determining citizen needs and providing responsive, equitable services to the community. Now, you can set goals. You can say, okay, give me examples. Next year, you better do better in this CAO because we didn't see it happening. So now you write those goals and you agree, and that becomes the template for next year. Initiative and risk taking, the vision, creativity, and innovation. So basically setting an example that urges the organization and the community towards experimentation, change, creative problem solving, and prompt action. I'm encouraging the CAO to write examples which now can actually fit in this definition for you. You can define it different, like I said, Council. So this is my definition of what it means. Next one, democratic advocacy and public engagement. This could answer some of council members' questions, where a CAO must be demonstrating a commitment to democratic principles by respecting elected officials, community interest groups, and the decision-making process, educating citizens about local government and acquiring knowledge of the social, economic, and political history of the community. And you are asking the CAO to give you robust work-related examples. How did you achieve that? I hope this would help answer a lot of questions from previous to this new template. So next one is human management, inclusion, employee effectiveness. I think this is a goal which should be in every senior management team managers, senior management team members' performance review. So this is about ensuring that policies and procedures for employee hiring, promotion, performance, appraisal, discipline are equitable, legal, and current, promoting the development and performance of employees throughout the organization, maintaining a consistently high level of quality in employees' work, operational procedures, and service delivery, creating an environment of involvement, respect, and connection of diverse, ideas, sorry for the typo, and background and talent. So this area would cover the workforce and the inclusivity piece, the employee effectiveness. You can write goals under that. You can say, give me an example on diversity, inclusion, and equity. What have you done on this work? So there could be a ton of examples under this work we can do. Okay, so next one, please. Budgeting and financial analysis. I don't want to read that. You already know what this CAO must be able to do with budgets and everything. Integrity. This is the most important one for me, in my opinion. Demonstrating fairness, honesty, and ethical and legal awareness in personal and professional relationships and activities. This is multifaceted for all stakeholders. So this is integrity when you deal with a council member. This is integrity when you deal with a member of public, a fringe group, a group which wants to advocate about something. So to other government levels, your employees. So this is integrity in all of your dealings. Provide us examples. How do you achieve that? So next one, please. So this score overall, so once all the scores are added up, depending on where they fall, it gives you an overall rating. We will talk more about these scores and ratings in future when we talk about some pay for performance structures, that how performance can be attached to pay. So this is the one page which actually is the start of process today, or in a closed meeting. I would, if council agrees to some kind of process today, they can actually ask the CAO, the new CAO, to start filling this template. They can actually say, okay, put your ideas, and here's our ideas. Let's have amalgamation of those ideas, and those are your goals. So who sets the goals? The council and the mayor. And the CAO can actually, based on all your governance documents, all your strategic plan, all the master plans, can start filling this template for you. This is the work that's required at this stage: approval of the process and writing of goals for next 12 months. After that, the tweaks to the performance system and all that, if you want to discuss that, we can have separate meetings and we can receive Councillor Kittrus's feedback, other feedbacks. We can have other conversations about that. But this is the work which we must do in a closed meeting setting someday. This is the next step of this performance evaluation process. This is about learning and development. I strongly believe every organizational leader must do a minimum of 30 hours of CPD, and continuous professional development, as you all know, is important. And this could be mentoring a colleague. This could be attending a conference. This could be, give me your plan. How would you improve yourself? Because we see a gap in your performance, okay? So this could be a goal set by the CAO, or the council encouraging for the CAO to be learning something which you feel it is a new skill they must acquire. So this is the page, we'll write all those. Next one, please. So this is the slide where, remember the 5-scale rating scale. These are the definitions just to provide you an idea of what an exceptional or excellent or a good rating should look like. If you are looking at a goal and an example provided by the CAO and you see, okay, I don't know where to put it, you can just read this guideline and you can just figure it out what's the appropriate place to be. So as to defining next steps, I think, as I've been saying this throughout this presentation, CAO must start writing their goals using the template, which is work plan for next 12 months. Council should meet and discuss and approve those goals. These shared goals must be approved and shared with the CAO. So those are the next steps. So I just want to thank you for listening, and this is the time for your questions and roundtable discussion. You want to come out of this PowerPoint, please?
Well, thanks very much, Rashid. Firstly, before I turn things over to council, a lot of work has gone into this. This is a very robust performance measures framework. And so thanks, Rashid, for taking the time to think all this through and to make sure that we have an improved process for evaluating our CAO on an ongoing basis. So thanks. I can tell a lot of work went into this. So I'm going to turn things over and get initial comments from all members of council, and then we'll take it from there. Starting with Councillor Foster, please.
Everything looks great in theory, but a lot of this ultimately is incumbent on the mayor and his or her interpretation of the CAO's performance. And I do have some concerns about that. In this particular review year as well, if we were to implement this next fall in September, October, as described, Rashid, I'm not sure that's going to be effective in this particular year. However, it could be very, very good in future years. So I have some, I guess you call them content concerns in terms of this particular year. I'm not going to mention them, but I'm really just alluding to the fact that the current CAO, we would be evaluating them starting in September, and it's not even a full operating year, plus the timing in terms of a new council down the line. So I do have some concerns about this particular year, Rashid. Only, and it's not that you've done something wrong. It's just you know, the time flow of having a new person in this right near the end of a term of council. So
can I answer that? So, Councillor Foster, absolutely. I would be very happy to listen to any suggestions. And I know we're not going into content like you said, but the timing of it, when we have a closed meeting, we can have a conversation about how to pack it in this many months what we have left. So I'm willing to listen to that. This is your process. You guys can design it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Foster. And I'd like to hear comments about the dates from everyone. Actually, this is a very awkward year to be doing this, so I wouldn't mind all council to weigh in on what you think as far as the timeline for completion, because I mean I can see it several different ways here. So I'd like your thoughts for sure, Councillor Van Leeuwen.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, no, I like that we're constantly improving these documents and the review process. One of the things on the document, it's called the work plan for the next 12 months, that sheet there. It speaks about council's strategic goal, and then it speaks about CA's goal for the upcoming year, and then key steps to achieve the goal. And Rashid, you had spoken about how you take the two goals and you align them. Some of the wording I'm a little curious on, where it says you have council's strategic goal, and I wonder if it should be CAO's work timeline for the upcoming year, and then you have the key steps to achieving the goal. It seems like the way it's written, at first I was like, the CAO's goal is to implement the CAO's or the council's goals. The CAO doesn't come up with his own goals and then merge them together to create a new goal. So the timeline, and I'm sure that that's sort of what you were implying, but in the same sense, the wording is like, how are you going to achieve that goal? And it could be that CO says, I can't achieve that goal in a 1-year term. It's a half, and I can understand that, but that's a bit of the wording aspect. I think probably one of the most difficult parts on this, and I don't know how you would ever change it, is bringing the comments from councillors, mayor and council together into a united kind of review. I would look at it in a sense and go, that final review, that person's got a personality disorder because you got 7 comments. So we would have a difficult, but I don't think that would change ever because you have 7 different people commenting. I will be honest, the timeline, I don't have a problem with the timeline. We really need to get this going and get it going fast. And so that we can start working on this. We do have a process in place, but I'm willing to do whatever we need to for the timeline. So because it is a weird year, so as long as there's no conflicts, I would say I'm good with the timeline.
Councillor McElwain, I'll come back to you, Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. I think this is excellent. It is hitting many of the points that I have complained about in previous years, and I think it does it very, very well. Of course, we do have some potential issues this year because of the short timeline that has been discussed already. But as far as an overall process, I think it's on the money, to be honest, and it's a matter of how well we implement it. If we follow your plan as you've laid it out, I think it's excellent. There is obviously a lot of room for subjectivity instead of objectivity in some situations, and that's the area where it always gets a little gray. And so I hope that as we work through the whole thing, that I think the process gets rid of some of that subjectivity. So I think you've done a great job, Rashid. And I have no problem with the timeline.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McElwain. Councillor Kittredge?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I guess I'll discuss the timeline first. The problem with this process right now is that we haven't had a performance review last year. And if we don't do that this year, That'll be 2 years that are not being done. And really this performance review that we do, if we do it this year, is for the next council, because it's the continuity of performance reviews that is the most important thing, because it is a tool for growth and improvement. And that's the whole basis of doing it. And so I believe that we need to have a performance review this year, even though the circumstances is it's a new person. We just went through a COVID where the strategic plans could not be done, all of them, and there's problems with them. So I feel that we really need to set, from this council, setting up this process to have a review this year. The timeline that you have is, it's going to go into, basically the final is in pretty much next year, like the next council. So it's I think we need to finish this in this council, and we need to do it before the election's over. I think that has to be done so that we have the document. The new council then has a base, even though it's not complete, because they're going to be setting their own strategic plans and their own things. And so then they have a base from the previous one, and that will be written in the report, the performance review, that, it's a new hire, but at least we have some experience, and then there's a basis. Because when we did the previous performance reviews, we didn't get anything from before. There was nothing. And so we had to just sort of start it from scratch. It was like the first performance review. And then we started it and it was basically the first year that 3 new counselors came on, which is this council, and they only had like a very limited experience. So then they didn't have a basis for the continuity. And that's why I feel that it's very important that we have one this year. We finish one, even though it's like an interim, just to get the basis for the next council to have at least a base. So that's my problem. I think that it's very important to expedite that timeline so that it's performed before the election, or even the month before the election. And I think that would be a valuable tool for the next council. That's really what it's for. It's not, even though we're going to be evaluating from what we have now in our brief time, it won't be complete. Like it won't be a total evaluation, but at least it's a start. And I feel that that's very, very important for the next council. Now, the evaluation, the problem I have with the evaluation on page 34 is when you do the averages and you're always saying, well, you have 7 people and you're doing the score, and then the one score will be the score. Well, the mathematical odds of 7 people doing this score is that almost always you'll get a 3 or 4. That's just the way it is. And so what happens to the things that say needs improvement is that they're not recognized. Like, they're not put on a list where that needs to be improved. It's kind of separate from the score almost, because that really makes the whole process of what needs to grow on. The other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a category of non-acceptable. There are certain things that are, I noticed that I liked it that you had the employee part of the score and our part of the score, but there has to be an unacceptable part of it, because when you have some things like the inclusiveness or something like that, well, some people might say that some of the behavior is unacceptable, let's say, and they want to score that. So that's a notice that needs to be done, and it needs to be recorded because then when something happens, it's present. And same with some things for council. Some things for council, when we have reports that are not complete, let's say, that's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. And that is a score that has to happen, because we need to, the biggest thing about the CAO is that it is actually the most important job in the whole municipality, because it has to integrate the two parts and bring them together. And he has a fundamental job of unifying what the whole project that we're doing, which is public service, which is service to the community. There's the actually every day, the execution, there is the strategic plan, but that changes but he's the continuity between all those things. And so that's why that needs to be, I like the part where you're actually writing all the comments and stuff like that. It was very well done. But those two parts of it, for now, I feel that we need to, the scale needs to be changed so that there are 0 scores or even negative scores, because you'll always get a 3 or 4 under the present system. Like that's how mathematically it works. Because when you average out, you'll have people that think it's exceptional, and then you'll have people that think it needs improvement, and that's always a 3. Like that's the way it works. Like I've done all these things, and most of the time, all the scores end up 3 or 4. And it doesn't really give a solid indication for the next people going, because when you have that final score, it just means I don't need to improve. Basically, that's the message you're saying. And so there's no way of highlighting that there is things that need to be improved. The process, I mean, the process where it goes in the circle, where the mayor is involved in way too many things in this process. One of the biggest things that happen, the dynamics that happen in all municipal things, is that there's a solid, always either a really great relationship between the CAO and the mayor, and that dominates, or they don't have a good relationship, and then somebody gets fired. So the whole thing is that we need to emphasize the whole of council, and the way the relationship is with the whole of council, and the mayor's fingers, whether he loves the CAO or dislikes the CAO, doesn't have all his fingerprints, and he doesn't edit out what is the key, what things council says. And that would be much more checked. So your job as the HR person, if you need clarity on the comments that the council makes, you should ask the council what they actually, which is what happened before. I was asked, let's say, oh, can you clarify certain comments? So the HR person would send a message to me, and I'd have to clarify maybe my comments, and then you allocate it. I just don't want the mayor editing out our comments. I think that that's not a good part of the process. I think whether the mayor would love the CAO or dislike the CAO, it's the whole of council that does this performance review. So those are just a few. I would like to not have the final decision today. I would like to be able to add and give you my comments, and I went through each page and added some third. The main part of the document, where you start from page 20 on, is actually quite exceptionally well done. I like that part. But some of the timelines and just the whole thing. Also, as a package, I'll just say this final comment. As a package, there are some people that I have 2 terms of experience. I have experience, and I think we just need to start this from a real basic level when people are starting as a new counselor. So I put on my hat, what would a new counselor be like? What would they might not have any management experience, no, and they wouldn't understand. So you need to understand like really what the importance of the CAO's job is and what it is in the legally in the Municipal Act and how it all works out, because it is absolutely the most important job in this whole thing, because it's the interface of the two parts, and both of them are working for the service of the people, but they're different dynamics in each part. And so that's why that person needs to have those, it needs to be done right. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave that.
That's it, Dunsmore.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Linton. Rashid, I will say this to you. This is one of the better ones I have seen in all the organizations I've worked with. You clearly have done this before, and you've done it well. It does highlight for me a lot of the problems that some municipalities have, in that you are asking for individual feedback on the sole employee that the council has. Each individual councillor gets input into it. And then if your slide 7, I believe it was, highlights your process, which I found very good. 2.4, the mayor, HR manager share the consolidated report with council. And to me, that's probably the most important meeting that would come out of council in this performance review. Because we just heard Councillor Kittredge talks about, we're going to have mathematical equations here and everything is going to end up with a 3. And the thing here is, in a performance appraisal with a CAO, it has to come from the body, the council, not councillors. And so that meeting, and it's something I think that we kind of haven't had in the past, and I would really like to see it, it needs to be a closed meeting. It needs to be where council argues and debates those scores and talks about their opinions of those scores and makes their pitches for why they put their score in there. And then from that, we come out with a consolidated report. And the mayor, as the head of council, is the one who signs off on that. The mayor doesn't have any more power than anybody else in that meeting, as long as we have those discussions. And I am very thrilled with the way you put this together. It does highlight the areas where we're going to have conflict with this council or any other council. We agree on a strategic plan. Did the CAO meet the goals set out in the strategic plan? Well, we voted 7-0 for a strategic plan, and I don't think we've had a 7-0 vote on any report that's come out to take us down that line. So there's always a difference of opinion, and it's getting that opinion settled in a council meeting so that the CAO has an opportunity to understand that council as a body sits here with them. And that's how they're graded on. So I think that's great. And I do like your timeline. Starting it in September, because this is a new year. This is we've all talked about it being a unique year. And getting it done by November 11th hands it over to a new council, which, yes, they will be voted in before that, but they don't get sworn into office, I believe, till December 6th or 7th, or some date in early December, I would assume, because that's what happened to us, right? But then you're handing them a package. So when they take over for us, they see the process that's going on. And I think trying to get it in before the election, that's going to be too rushed and we're going to make too many mistakes. So I'm okay with your timeline the way it is and giving the CAO a performance review and handing it off to the next council so they know where we all stand. But I'm really impressed with the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dunsmore. Councillor McCrae.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you to Rashid. I'm very impressed with the process, the document, and the timeline. My only comment would be a leader leads only as long as people are willing to follow. And I think it's important to hear from those who are being led. So are there plans to have the senior managers, for example, provide some feedback on the CAO's performance? Because I think it would be most important to hear that.
Yeah, can you answer that, Rashid?
Yeah, so we haven't incorporated that into this process, but the mayor and the council have every right to say, senior management team, we are about to start this process. Could you please submit your feedback to our HR person? Hey, so that's not a bad idea, because hearing from the direct reports, I normally check references when I hire somebody. I say, give me a direct report reference too. So I think it's a great suggestion. So we can incorporate that if there's agreement.
Okay, I think it would be important to hear from direct reports as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I have a couple comments, and then I'll see if there's any final comments from members of council. So I really like this process. I think it cleans up one thing that I was always concerned about the former process. And one of the measures about how effective a CAO is for sure related to what they do. So it's related to a strategic plan, making sure that we're pushing ahead on the priorities that council set. But the other piece of it is how they do what they do. And that's what I like about this process. It talks about the core competencies, and it talks about what being a strong leader needs to do as far as internal communication, in terms of mentoring. So I like that piece to it, because you can do all the right things, but if you do them in the wrong ways, that's not being a good CAO. So I like that addition. I think it really strengthens it. I think when I'm looking through the rating, and I think it's absolutely critical that you take an average rating, because I don't know how else you could do it. I mean, that's only one factor, and then the council's comments is the other factor. So I think that those two things balance off. But one of the things I was thinking about, I was wondering about the utility, and if you've ever seen this, Rashid, about council not seeing the employee's rating when we do our rating. Because I don't want us as council to be influenced by how the CAO thinks they did. I want those two things to be done blind of each other. And so I want your thoughts on that one before I wrap up our comments here, because I think that would be more true for us to give comments and to the CAO to give comments without either of us seeing what the other said about them. I think that's good. I think if this process can work with this council, because this is one of the things that we won't have a lot of agreement on from time to time. If it can work with this council, that means the process is solid. And I think it'll work with any council. And so I think that's good. We have to really nail down this process and make sure it works. I think that consolidated comments, the councils, that's one of the key success factors of this working, is when we have those council comments, it can't be just verbatim of everything everybody said. It's got to be a synthesis of what was said, and it's got to be approved by a majority in a meeting. So that's absolutely critical. We cannot be sending out comments that are in conflict with each other to our CAO. So that's going to be the most critical part of this process, is to make sure that we have a consolidated comment from council on each of these different items, and it's got to be approved by the majority of council in a closed meeting. Absolutely critical. I would never want to be a CAO of an organization that didn't have council's consolidated comment back, but instead had 7 different, often conflicting comments back. So that is a process that we absolutely need to do, and we need to do it right. But again, it needs a vote from every member of council in the closed session that this is our consolidated comment in this section. And as Councillor Dunsmore said, that might be a drawn out process to get to that consolidated comment, but we have to go through that process in a meeting, not email feedback after the fact or during the process. It's got to be in a meeting. That's absolutely critical for this process to work. I'm okay with the timelines. The timelines are awkward this year, no matter how you slice it. But the way it's laid out, finishing things up when you've laid out they're finishing things up, you're kind of handing it to the next council, but you're not trying to do it before the election. I can see, Rashid, where you had a struggle trying to find those dates, and it's not perfect, but I can't offer a better suggestion. I think this is as good as it gets with the year we have, so I'm okay with with that, I do absolutely think we need to go through this process as this council and hand something off to the next council. So I think that's the only way we can do it. Overall, I really like this framework. I think it's very rigorous. I think it's very solid. It addresses some of the gray areas that we had in the formal process, and it's the best that we've seen here for sure. And I think that it has to go through that process with council when we get into the content. We'll have lots of, I'm sure, pretty involved conversations in closed meetings about this, and that's what council has to do. We have to do these sessions in closed meeting and come up with our scoring and our rating and our suggestions for improvement as a full council in a closed meeting. So, but I think that doesn't help us because we're going to have to go through that difficulty, but at least provides the framework in order to do that and do it effectively. So thanks for this, Rashid. I think it's really, really well done, and I'm pleased with the way it is. Okay, a final comments from Councillor. I know Councillor Foster, you went first, so you might have something else to add here.
Thanks, Mayor. In terms of the timeline this year, I keep wondering, at the risk of going into content, Mayor, this particular year, the incumbent, starts in January. Just about anyone needs at least 3 months to really kind of get rolling, get their feet wet. So that leaves us with April, May, June, July, August, September. So I keep wondering about whether, Rashid, whether this first year should be like a 6-month review, because simply from April 1st to the end of September as a semi-annual measuring period, only because it fits. That's what we have this particular year. And I'm wondering if that'll establish a baseline for 2023. I don't see how we can do an annual review next September when the person started in January. That's less than 9 months, and that review will be happening during or right after, right before an election. So that's just, quite frankly, very difficult to do objectively at that time period. So I'm not sure, it's awkward this year just because of the timelines we're facing. The only other thing I add is, Steve, I'm a little perplexed what you said, Councillor Van Leeuwen. I think you said something like, we need to do this fast because we need to get working on this. I'm a little baffled by what you mean exactly. Doing this fast doesn't have a benefit, as far as I'm concerned. We got to do it right, but I don't know if you can clarify what you meant exactly. But I'm just confused by your comment. We need to do this fast because we need to get working on this. I just honestly don't know what you mean by that. But doing this quickly is not the way forward, especially in a shortened year.
Yeah, Councillor Van Leeuwen, you can respond to that.
Thanks. Yeah, and if it was confusing by that words, I apologize. I mean, in the sense of, I don't want to drag this out past the end of this term of council. That we need to do this this year. We need to complete this so that we can actually have something for next year, next council as well, to launch off of. So fast meaning make it work in our schedules, and let's not drag this process. So unless there's a major conflict, like I said, then perhaps something could happen. But otherwise, we need to make sure that this is done in our term. That's what I meant by that.
Thanks for that, Councillor Van Leeuwen. Councillor Kittredge?
Yeah, I'd just like to talk about the page 34, the rating. I'm going to discuss this. First of all, number 1 that says needs improvement, and number 2 that says expected. They're kind of reversed, and they're kind of an amalgamation that needs to be put together. Generally, as it reads, it says, so number 2, the expected says, generally performance does not meet performance standard. So that would mean that it needs improvement. The employee may not possess all the skills and experience and or qualifications at this stage. It sounds like those should be reversed. It should be, that one should be the one that's lower as number one. And it should be not acceptable. That's what it should say. Because you're saying the wording there means that the plane maybe to underfill and is on a development plan and receives high level of coach. It's somebody that is at the lowest scale, the number two, unexpected. Like you're describing somebody that needs help and needs to be. So I believe that the needs improvement and the expected, they need to really, that needs to be overhauled in a real sense, because it doesn't make sense. The other thing is the title good should be changed to acceptable, because you're putting in needs improvement expected, and then you're adding a value, which is good. And really what you want to say is it's acceptable for the standards that we're having. And the excellent and then exceptional. Well, the problem with the number 4, which is good, and then the exceptional, is that there's really, you need to make a really clear understanding of how that should be evaluated I mean, objectively, because number 5, exceptional, it reads, this is a performance that is stellar. Not only do they meet, they exceed the work objectives, they constantly strive to improve upon themselves. But wouldn't that be just expected? I mean, that's not exceptional. And then it says, they are passionate, creative, dynamic employees who do not settle for the status quo. But all those terms are pretty subjective. So it's not really, it seems like it's just like you're liking the person. And so I think that actually, for exceptional, there actually is objective standards that you can rate, and there's benchmarks, what would be exceptional. And that's what we need to understand. So I feel that the scoring it needs some work in clarification. And I'm not saying, I went through this. I have, the words matter. It's the way you have to, to make it understandable and not try to have it as subjective as possible, have it more objective. And that's what my input on this. And so that is also why I believe that we should defer this and have it come back, with some of the inputs. I know everyone here is probably going to vote for it. It's okay, but it's not really. It needs improvement.
Yeah, and I think that's council's decision to make, whether it needs improvement or whether it should be deferred. Councillor McWayne?
Thanks, Mayor. I agree with Steve that there are improvements to be made. I think we have time for those improvements between now and September, but I think that we should get going in the next step in the short term, though, and having the CAO start to write their goals for the rest of this year if we're going to have anything happen in September, October timeframe. So I don't want to delay that a whole lot, because we need to have those goals defined. I did want to comment on, I guess, both comments from you, Kelly, and from Stephen. You're suggesting that the CAO only see the consolidated or the weighting, the grading as agreed to by all 7 members of council. And this process actually is very similar to the process that I lived with for 30 some years at IBM. It's the same basic thing. It just doesn't have a 7-member council, but I had, peer reviews and 360 reviews and stuff like that. So it's not dissimilar. And it was, so my manager or the HR manager would always give me the final rating that I would get in each level of my performance review. But it was the single comments from either my peers or my customers, because both got reviewed, that made the most difference. Because the I mean, if I did something really stupid and got a low review, or I did something really great and got a high review, well, that's, it's nice to know why that happened. But when you, as Councillor Kittredge said, you usually end up with 3s and 4s, and it's the single review or the single comment from an individual can make a big difference to how you see yourself or how you present yourself in the following year. And so when you get just a consolidated, you got rated a 3 or you got rated a 4, that means nothing. So I don't agree with consolidating into a single comment. I think the individual comments are very important.
Rashid?
Very, very good comment, Councillor McEwen. And I'll say this, that throughout the year, you have every opportunity to provide performance feedback, individual comments in your one-on-one meetings. You set up your communication systems within the organization, how CAO speaks to you, receive that feedback on every report what you provide. This is too late in the year. If during the performance review process, you're going to remind them in January of last year, you didn't listen to me, that's too late. That conversation should have happened and occurred. So if you consolidate throughout the years those comments and opportunities, if they are afforded to you, that's what the performance is, ongoing performance. In this review, there's no other mathematical way of providing feedback. You can provide 7 individual comments. Let's, for the discussion's sake, let's say they are written on a piece of paper. The score between 7 of you is different, and you have to come up to an average of somehow. If it ends up to be 4, good luck to our council, because this is how you voted. For each one of you, if you do the process correctly, and yes, you could have an opposing opinion overall, but can you, if you follow the process, I can assure you that you can actually see performance as a consolidation of a structured process. The scoring in the end should not be that different. If somebody is asking, like Councillor Kittredge asked, for minus ratings, that'd be a new HR book I'll write, because scoring starts from needs improvement or unacceptable. I can use any language, any word there. But going minus on performance, saying that, yeah, you are that means needs improvement. That does not mean that I can score you minus 38. That means that, yes, we saw some deficiencies and you need improvement. I will just take you to the lowest of this stage and the step. So I'll just leave it at that throughout the year, there should be other ways to provide feedback. And I also would encourage that the council and the mayor or HR and the mayor or somebody does provide that summary of those comments to the recipient, saying some council members have a concern about your communication style, but most of them thought that you're good. There's no harm in saying that, because that is a very valid point. If you say citizens are not happy with your service on something, the CAO must hear that. So this is what the mayor and HR department or whoever the committee who talks to the CAO that owes to this committee, this group, that we will take that feedback somehow. It doesn't have to be written on a piece of paper. That could be a consolidated verbal summary by the mayor to the CAO, and HR could be in the room if you want. So that's my comment. I'll just go quiet. Maybe I spoke too much. Sorry, Mayor.
No, that's fine, Rashid. I just wanted to follow up on that because I think Councillor McEwen has a point, but I think we all have to be clear on what the consolidated council comment is, and it isn't just the CAO is great or the CAO is terrible. It tries to bring in as much of the common themes as possible from as many comments as possible. So it could be something like, well, 2 members of council thought this, the majority thought this. So, and we have to debate that as a council in a closed meeting, and at the end of the day, we have to sign off on our consolidated comment. And so that's what all I was saying is I think there's significant amount of discussion that will go into that to make sure that councillors who might not have been in the majority still have their comment represented in that consolidated comment, because the CAO only has one boss, and it's all of council. I'm not the sales boss. Councillor Kittredge is not the sales boss. It's all of council. So it's incumbent on us as council to provide our comment back to our CAO and include as much of the councillor's feedback into that comment as possible, and make sure at the end of the day council signs off on it. I think it's going to be, I think, you know, when we go into that process, it's going to be okay and it's going to be robust. But I really do feel like as a CEO's boss, all the council has to have a consolidated council comment that they can take and then make changes, make improvements based on what that comment is. Councillor McLean?
Thanks. Just as a follow-up, that sounds better than when you worded it the first time. It needs to be, it can be a consolidated report back to the CAO, but it needs to incorporate the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. It can't just be a whitewash to make the CAO feel better or anything of that nature. It needs to include, and as I said, it needs to include the things that he did really well as the things that maybe he didn't do so well under a certain part of the performance criteria.
100% agree. Councillor Kittredge?
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree with Councillor McElwain that, yes, I would like the CAO to begin those goals and processes as soon as possible. But at the same time, just mentioning that we have to have the consolidated report in a certain way, it doesn't spell that out right now in this report on how that is going to be done, and what the format is, and it doesn't have anything like that. So I still think that there's parts of this where, yes, I would like to start this CA review process, but at the same time, I think this still needs to be tweaked. And then we get a final vote on it when it has those provisions and those more detailed. As I had stated before, like some of the rating things, they're not as clear as they should be, and are not as helpful, because in making the decisions, you need to have it much more objective of what's exceeding the standard, what's exceptional, like what that is. And what we'll need to do is, if we have examples, concrete examples, when somebody says, they don't answer my questions timely, and they want to put that down. So what you're saying, that it's not worthwhile to bring that up in the review, like even if you have actual concrete examples, so you're not supposed to bring that up. Like, I think that's what this whole review process is about, of bringing up all the examples. Those are concrete. They're not subjective. They actually happened. So, like, can you clarify that on how you're bringing this together, like when we do the review?
Rashid, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll address both things, so the rating scale and also the examples and consolidation of that. So absolutely, you have 7 opinions about a criteria. You have 7 examples under one criteria. You have 7 ways of saying your feedback to somebody. I'm not I'm not taking that away from you. Absolutely, Councillor Kittredge, you are providing that example that has to be considered and conveyed to the CIO, that you are not responding to my emails, or your communication style is not working for me, whatever it is. Yeah, as an example. Absolutely. All that amalgamation or consolidation means that 7 of those comments saying that 2 of the council members were really happy with your communication style, 2 were on the fence, and 2 really didn't like you. That feedback should go to CIO. I have no problem in saying that. So you as a council, as a body, would look at that amalgamated, consolidated, comment, and you'll say, yeah, you captured most of it. If we want to be really nitpicky about every single word, then good luck. It will be a very long process. But before I just give the mic back, I'm just going to say about the scale. This rating scale is actually very, very good, Councillor Kittredge. So needing improvement and expected is that it is expected of a person who at this stage, brand new, learning this job, haven't been able to be exceptional or excellent, is doing what's expected of the job. Too new, needing some kind of coaching, brand new to the role, under hire. Those are the categories under expected. So if you read the whole spiel, it explains why it is. Needing improvement means that this person actually requires something, some kind of an intervention, that you are not able to manage this area of your performance and you must be doing something better. This is a failure, unacceptable. Needing improvement means that. So the titles can be changed as you say. Just one final comment about excellent and exceptional, that how do we, so I agree with you, Councillor Kittredge, that what is the example of being exceptional? So being exceptional, a stellar performance, it says provide documented proof to provide this rating. So imagine if the majority of council want to say that, you know what, we want to give this incumbent 5 on everything, they must provide some documented examples of why. What is over and above and beyond the stellar performance means that is more than your job description duty. What more? You are asked to buy a piece of land and you saved us $30 million. I think that's more and above. Is this excellent expected of you, or is this excellent or stellar? Choose the words. So we can be wordsmithing this day in, day out, but actually it is a template which gives you all what you need. But I'm happy to change titles if the council agrees.
Councillor McCray.
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you, I'd just like to comment, as personal experience, having done many performance reviews, both as a leader and as the HR rep in the room. The best reviews I found were those where there were only 3 people in the room: the leader, the HR rep, and the individual having the review. That gives you a lot more opportunity to have frank and open and honest discussions. And we would often go with a consolidated HR report, but the HR rep and me as a leader, or vice versa, we were fully prepped in knowing all the individual comments that were provided that went into the consolidated report. So we could speak to outliers when we were having that conversation with the individual. It might be, well, I noticed you seem to have a strained relationship with so-and-so. Could you perhaps explain that to us? What seems to be happening here? What are the challenges you're facing? How can we help you to improve that relationship? So you have lots more opportunities to have an open discussion, because you're there to help the individual improve. So I'm all in favor of just going with the mayor and the manager meeting with the individual to discuss the council's feedback.
Councillor Dunsmore.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor McCray, because that's the gist of resolving issues, in that you have that consolidated meeting where we have the council as a whole, because we are the sole employer as a unit, not as individuals. But the mayor and the HR head are armed with all those comments, and you can help the individuals work on the relationships that they have fallen short on. And that works on improving the individual as an organizational leader. But to have all the comments in there and beat down on the person is not a growth situation. situation that stymies growth, actually. And that's why I'm very pleased with how you've laid this out. I do like your process and the fact that we'll consolidate that. And hey, I look forward to a heated argument when it comes down to consolidating these, and then have the mayor and the HR person present them all and talk about those shortcomings that Ian just mentioned. So that's a good process, and that's why this is a good process.
Great, thanks, Council. I'm going to read the recommendation then to have a chance for any further discussion at that point. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of St. Wellington adopt the CEO performance evaluation process as set out by the Manager of Human Resources at the special council meeting dated March 2nd, 2022. If I get a mover for that, please. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor McCray. Any last comments on this? Councillor Foster?
I'm not in favor of consolidated review, and I'm not in favor of tabling an average. There's a folly with averages. And I want to talk through an example. If there are 6 people evaluating the CAO on a scale of 1 to 5, and the CAO sees, and I'll use a specific example. If all 6 people give the person a rating of 3 on an item, you have 6 people giving you a 3, which is, let's say, an average rating. You might also have 2 people give the person a 1, 2 people give the person a 3, and 2 people give them a 5. That 2 adds up to 18 points out of a possible 30. It's the exact same arithmetic average, but seeing that 2 people gave you basically a very negative, and 2 gave you kind of an average, and 2 gave you an outstanding, that gives that employee a much different picture than simply saying your average rating of 6 people was a 3. Similarly, let's say 3 people gave you a 1, does not meet, and 3 people gave you a 5, exceeds. In all 3 cases that I've outlined, the average rating is about a 3. And this is why I think it's important that we don't consolidate, both in terms of the numeric score, but also in terms of the actual comments. I agree with Councillor McElwain. The person needs to hear the comments that aren't consolidated and smoothed over. And this is why I'm not in favor of this process, because of the folly of averaging, the folly of consolidating. And I just outlined how the same average ratings reflect 3 completely different scenarios. And it's important that the employee sees the dispersed comments. And I have seen performance reviews where, rather than giving you an average of what the ratings were, you'll see a matrix. Consider an attribute you're being evaluated on, and you'll see the 1, the 2, 3, 4, 5 in a matrix, and you'll see an X representing one person, and you'll see a number of X's in below average or barely meets, average performance, above average, and superior. That way the employee can see the dispersal of evaluations rather than the average of the evaluations. It paints you a much different picture, that dispersal. And this is why I'm not in favor of this process the way we've tabled. I've heard some excellent arguments both for and against, but and this is actually how many companies do this. It's very important that the employee see the range of evaluations rather than the consolidated average of the evaluations. So on that basis alone, I can't support this. I think it needs to be deferred. More work needs to be done. I can't support it.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Kittrus?
Well, I have made my comments. I would like to submit more written ones on each thing. I don't agree with what you have said, Rashid. I think this is confusing and it is not objective. And As I would like to say about the averages, this is an improvement on the previous performance review, but it will still lead to the status quo. It will not lead to continuous improvement. And that's because when you consolidate and you edit the comments, they will only, you will get somebody that will say, it's not their comment, so it's somebody else's comment, and they will not actually be able to communicate that, like their concerns. It'll be all about an average, and it won't lead to real improvement. Seeing the breadth of comments, I think Councillor McIlwain was absolutely correct that the individual comments and the different categories that we are evaluating is very important. And that's what leads to real improvement. And those things need to be done in a way that, and the process needs to be done so that it is improving. Because I believe that this will lead to, again, a way of having status quo, and things won't improve as much as they should. And so I think we need to do a little bit more work on this. And we have a timeline. We're not really rushed. We're not doing anything. We're not actually going to be seeing this for many months. I think that if we put in our comments and any additions and then come back in a month, we still have lots of time. And the timeline is, so it's not done before the election, but it'll be done this term. And I think that that's okay. But I think that it's better to have, to try at least on this council, to try in some way build a consensus. That would be a novel concept. And so that's what I would suggest. I would suggest that we defer for a period and then come back to it in a month. I think that's the wisest thing to do. I think that then we'll get a consensus on it. You're going to just create the whole same thing that we've always been doing, which is, yeah, because I got the 4 votes or 5, I win, too bad. And that's what the whole history of this council's been. So like maybe we should practice something like that.
The way this council works, Councillor Kitchus, is the majority vote makes a decision and provides direction to staff, period. Councillor McIlwain?
Thank you. I agree that I think there are some things, as I said earlier, that need to be worked out on it. I don't like the idea of deferring because I think that it's important that our CAO start working on his work plan as soon as possible. So what I would suggest is that we reword the recommendation in such a way that the CAO can start doing his work plan, but the process has to be reviewed again in a certain time frame to integrate the comments made over the next, make it a month. I don't know what the time frame is, but I just I think it's important that the process gets started, and the overall process, though, still needs some minor changes. Maybe not even minor, but it needs some changes.
Councillor Van Leeuwen?
Thanks, Mayor. I was thinking something similar to what Councillor McIlwain is saying, mostly because I do feel like there was a few small comments made, little ideas that were put forward, but the motion is very final in its state that it's sitting. If you look at what we have here, it's called, the introduction and presentation. I'm looking at our agenda and it says council discussion and feedback. And then we have a recommendation that says we're going to adopt it. but we did get some feedback that could be worked into this that should be written and just kind of reviewed one last time. And yet at the same point, we do want to have the CAO start with his work plan and according to strategic process. So I wonder if is there a way that we can adapt this recommendation to allow for some additional comments, but with a preliminary, that we accept this as a preliminary plan with final review or something. I'm just concerned that we just had a meeting called Council Discussion and Feedback. We've given a lot, and now we are accepting it in its current state. Thanks.
Rashid, do you have anything to add to that? I don't know what, there was a couple specific pieces of feedback. One from Councillor McCrae about adding a component of direct reports in. I saw one related to the wording of the evaluation criteria. A couple fairly minor ones. The rest, I have no idea what the direction would be to require a deferral. I don't know what you do as a staff to make changes to some of the other comments. But do you have any comment about that? I'm really hesitant for us to pursue a part of this process without approving the process. I feel like you got to approve the process, and once you're okay with the process, step one starts. The CEO does the work that they have to do. Would be very unsupportive of us not passing a process and then starting the process. That to me isn't good governance, but I'd like your thoughts on that, Rashid.
So I think the fundamental change or question in the room to address Councillor Kittredge and everybody is about this: how do this feedback get to the CAO? And consolidation is not seen as the right tool. And scoring individually and sharing all those individuals, as Councillor Foster said, I think that's what the fundamental change here has been asked about. So definition of unacceptable versus the rating sees needs improvement. I'm willing to change that, like I said. So if Councillor Kittredge can give me different language onto that, and then Council agrees to the new language, then that be your language. I don't mind the definition of how you fail or pass. The real concept is what Councillor Foster said, and about this amalgamation of the consolidation of the scores and how this could be individually given and all that. This is what I heard. If I'm wrong, guys, you can just help me understand that. But I think it is that, okay, how we provide this feedback is the most important piece to the council. If that's the case, then that's what you're saying, that just come back with an understanding that this is not going to work for you. The averaging is not going to work for you. Although the mayor, myself, and we are saying that those consolidated comments will come back to you first as the decision-making body. So if you have given, 3 people have given neutral, one is given bad comment, and one is given excellent. These are amalgamated. That doesn't mean that's Rashid's words. Your words can be, or mayor's words can be, that this is a consolidated, paragraph. And some people thought you were great in communication. Some of us thought that you are not. Here's the feedback. But that is the person on the receiving end. How do they take that? Kindly think about that. If you are on the receiving end of that 7 different comments, how would you take that? Which one is correct? Which one I'm excellent or I'm not? So that's where your voting and you talking as a body comes into play. If you want to give individual feedback and which individually score that, that's giving 7 different ideas to a person. And if you are okay with that, then you can pass that resolution. So that's, I don't know if that answers, Mayor, your question, but I think that's what I'm hearing is the biggest outstanding item.
Well, there's a few things that have been said today, and I don't know how to pull it all together. But all I'm asking you, Rashid, if council kicks this down the road again, and we defer this, do you have what you need to do anything?
I don't. Number 1, I don't. Number 2, timelines, and this year's being the unusual year. I like how Councillor Foster explained April to whatever, and it's 6-month performance review. This is too tight timeline for yourselves as well. people who will be asking for re-election, and you're busy and all that, and this process is ongoing. It was very hard for me to design something this quick, get your approval, get the goal setting done, and then you're reviewing. So you will hardly have a break in the middle. So if it's not approved now, what would happen is it will take us another, whatever month or so. So I think we can kiss a goodbye that this year is not good for performance management. So this is my suggestion. So I don't have enough understanding of what you are trying to achieve.
And just to remind council that if we don't pass this, then the old performance measures, the old performance appraisal system still lives, and that's what we're going with. Councillor McCrae?
Thank you, Mayor Linton. Through you, if I may suggest, I've heard a number of suggestions here. Would it be possible for us to go with what Rashid has presented? I am still in favor of the consolidated report, because at the end of the day, when you're deciding the compensation aspect, you're going to go with an average to figure out what that's going to be. But could we include as an addendum to the actual consolidated review that there are the actual individual scores and comments provided by the counselors, so that the individual does have that, but the focus of the actual meeting will be on the consolidated version, where the HR manager and the mayor will also discuss if there's any particular outliers that they feel need to be brought forward and discussed with the CEO. Those will be there. I'd also like to see that there is some comments provided by direct reports, so that the CAO is also getting feedback from those that he leads. But would that be a reasonable alternative for council to consider?
Okay, so let's pull this together, Councillor McCrae. I like where you're going with this. So you're adding in two items there. The first item is that the CEO will be receiving verbatim comments from all councils as part of the package they receive, in addition to the consolidated statements that were approved by council in a closed meeting. The second piece that you're adding in there is that there's a part to the process that requires direct reports to have evaluation and feedback in as part of the formal part of this process.
Yes.
Okay. So if we added that to the recommendation, how does council feel about that? Okay, so when we talk here, let's stick to what I just asked, okay? Councillor Foster?
As soon as you amalgamate and consolidate, you lose the breadth of the data, and that's a problem. I can't support a consolidated statement. They need to see everything. They need to see the dispersed range of responses and evaluations. As soon as you average, you lose the important data. So it has to be dispersed. That's how other organizations do this, including Center Wellington Hydro, for example. The president will see how each member of the board answered each attribute. They don't get an average. They see the number of people who gave them a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. And that's what tells the story. And that's really key. And as soon as we consolidate it and use an average, we lose that breadth of analysis. And that's a problem. That's the folly of averages in mathematics. If three counselors go to the pub and one person has 0 drinks and one person has 3 drinks and one person has 9 drinks, that's an average of 4 drinks.
Okay, Councillor, I'm just gonna stop you there, Councillor Foster. We don't need the math. We don't need to be taught here. We got it. We got it the first time you said it. You don't have to say it 4 times. So what Councillor McCrae was trying to get at is trying to do both things.
You've interrupted me, sir. I was
because you weren't adding anything to the conversation.
Point of order.
I'm not going to accept your point of order right now.
You shouldn't interrupt. I was not finished, sir, and you interrupted me.
One of the items that we have in our procedures bylaw is that a councillor will be succinct and provide value in his discussions, and basically we don't have to hear another scenario about math. What Councillor McCrae was just trying to do is trying to address your concern by providing all the information to the CAO, in addition to an average, which I still think there's utility. You're suggesting, and we hear you, that there's no utility at all in an average score. We understand your point there. we don't have to accept it, but we understand your point. Councillor McCray was just trying to provide both pieces of information. Councillor Van Looy.
I don't think you should interrupt me in mid-sentence, sir. That's a lack of respect.
Councillor Van Leeuwen.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I really like the idea, and so I was thinking, I'm good. The idea of Councillor McCray, we've had surveys in the past where we would get an average that it would say, listen, you know, in general, we're doing a good job with heritage, yada, yada, yada. But then the real meat of it, you say, okay, average comment. But when you went down, if you wanted to do improvements, we would be able to look further at the individual comments of the committee or the communities and such in order to understand and say, you know what, average together, some are really happy, some are very disappointed, whatever it is. But if I want to actually improve as a staff member or as somebody, how can I meet the obligations or the disappointments of those lower comments? Because the job evaluation is also to improve the person. So at this point, I really like that, and I could support this if we add something like that.
Okay, so I've just had a sidebar with our clerk, and she suggests that we just provide direction to staff, not change the recommendation, but provide direction to staff to include the two items, to add feedback from direct reports and to provide verbatim comments on councillor feedback to the CAO. So that will be captured in the minutes. So I think that we can do that and still not make any amendments to our recommendation if council's okay with that. Councillor McElwain?
Sorry, I had trouble finding my mic. My suggestion was to defer it for a little bit, simply to give Rashid more time to incorporate, instead of us coming up with some words today to change the recommendation as it came forward. It would give him another couple of weeks to incorporate basically the same stuff, but he has more time to think about it and make sure that we do it right. So that's why I suggested we go forward with basically the same thing you're asking. I'm just suggesting that the words, the changes to the recommendation be kicked down the road a couple of weeks to give Rashid more time to incorporate all of the discussion we've had today, because we've taken 2 hours of discussion and tried to put it down into 2 sentences, and I don't think that's catching everything that we've talked about.
I guess the challenge, Councillor McElwain, is that we'd have to set up another meeting with council, and it's always difficult to set meetings with council and do the right notice and that kind of stuff. If we can provide direction today, that means that we can start the process. And so I think that's the challenge. If council wants to defer this whole thing, then that's council's decision. But if we can get away with making it a couple key changes and council's okay with that, it means that we can start the process and stick to our timelines, because I really feel like these discussions have to be in an open council session. We can't be waiting for councillors to send emails about all kinds of changes that haven't gone through this process. So I guess we're just trying to see if we can come to an agreement today on this one. Any other final comments before this? Councillor Kitchis?
First of all, I'd like to correct the mayor. I understand that we have a majority. It's how we achieve that majority that is in question in the process. And so I'm trying to facilitate that we agree on this all together. And that is valuable for us moving forward. Next, I'd like to say that I do want to move forward with this process. I like the suggestions from Councillor McCray. And I feel that that is a positive possibility for us moving forward, because it does allow for the full gamut of comments to be made, And it does allow them to see that what exactly does have to improve. I find that is actually really one of the most important things. There are some tweaks I'd like to have with the wordings of the evaluation. But generally what the mayor has said about the clerk adding those things to our motion, I feel that I do want to move forward with this year. I find that will be important. I'd like to dispute the fact that we can't call a meeting and we'll be deferring this for forever. That's not true. We can call a meeting anytime we want and we can arrange for it. And we've done it successfully many times where we've called somebody and then a week later we have a meeting. So, that argument that we can't call a meeting and we're going to defer it for a long time is not true. Still on that point, I would support adding those two things as Councillor McCrae has suggested. I feel that will allow us to move forward and therefore we can start this process. If council is okay with me sending something to Rashid, that's fine. It won't be major other than I agree to this process as it stands with the amendment.
Okay, so just to clarify, I'm going to read the recommendation will read as it is, but the direction to staff will be to add feedback from direct reports of the CEO, and the other piece of direction to staff would be to include verbatim comments from councillors to the CEO in each of these areas. So they'd be getting everything that council writes about them. So that's just direction. It won't be reflected in the recommendation, okay? But it's direction to staff, and Rashid got that. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks for the conversation. Again, thanks, Rashid. This is significantly better than our former performance evaluation process. So I'm glad we were able to move ahead on it, because I think it's a solid process, and I think it's going to work well for us. So thanks for all the work to you and your team. Thanks for being here as well, Jess. I know it's not easy to put something like this together. Confirmatory bylaw. I have a recommendation of bylaw 2022-9T confirm the proceedings of council at its workshop held March 2nd, 2022 be introduced a first, second, and third time and passed in open council. Have a mover for that, please. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor Van Leeuwen. All in favor? And motion to adjourn. Councillor Kittress, second by Councillor McElwain. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the day.